Have you ever asked yourself, why do they seem fine while I'm still wrestling with everything we shared? You see them laughing, living, maybe even loving again. And there's that voice inside whispering, maybe it really was that easy for them. But here's a truth most people never say out loud: moving on isn't what it looks like on the surface. It's not about blocking numbers, finding someone new, or curating a perfect social media feed. That's the illusion. The real story? It's deeper. And it's written where no one else sees, in the silence, in the soul, in the moments they never talk about. This video isn't just another comforting message. It's a confrontation. A revelation. A deep dive into what's actually happening behind their bravado. And if you've ever been left questioning your worth after someone walked away, stay with me. Because what you're about to discover might just flip everything you thought you understood about closure, healing, and what it really means to be unforgettable. Here's the trap. We've been told that healing looks like forgetting. That peace means no longer feeling. That letting go means nothing should linger. But what if that's all wrong? What if the way you feel, those echoes of connection that refuse to fade, aren't weakness, but proof of something real? That's the perspective shift we're going to unpack, with clarity, with honesty, and yes, with a grounded dose of stoicism. Because in Stoic relationships, the goal isn't avoidance, it's presence. Understanding. Strength through stillness. So if you're ready to see what they won't admit, to understand why your presence still echoes even in your absence, keep watching. You're not the haunted one. You're not stuck. In fact, what you'll realize is that your silence might be saying more than their words ever could. And I'll tell you this right now, by the time we reach the final truth, you'll see just how powerful you've become by simply surviving, letting go, and choosing to rise instead of chase. But first, let's start at the very root of why they thought they moved on, and why it's simply not possible. 1. The heart stores what the mind tries to erase. Why is it that we think forgetting is a sign of progress? That memories should obey logic? That feelings have expiration dates? The truth is, people underestimate the endurance of the heart. They believe that once a decision is made, once someone walks away, the feelings will simply evaporate. That detachment is instant, clean, and final. But you and I both know that's not how it works. Emotions don't vanish because someone decides they're done. And love, real love, isn't erased with distance, silence, or distraction. That's the lie people tell themselves to cope, not the truth they face when they're alone. Let's be honest, how many of them truly moved on? Not just physically, not just in appearances, but in the stillness of night, when the noise fades and the masks slip. That's where the truth lives. You can distract the mind, but you can't trick the soul. You can scroll, date, run, even laugh, but what's buried always resurfaces. And here's the secret. If what you had was genuine, it's not something they moved on from. It's something they buried under layers of denial, hoping it would stay quiet. But silence isn't absence, it's storage. The heart is a vault. It keeps what mattered. It stores the energy, the moments, the feeling of being known. It files it under, unresolved, and waits. So why do they act fine? Because pretending is easier than processing. Because admitting that you were the one who mattered means confronting their own failure. It means they'd have to say, I let go of something real. I wasn't ready. I didn't know how to hold it. And how many people do you know who are brave enough to say that? Instead, they rewrite the narrative. They frame you as a phase, a detour, a lesson. Anything but the truth, that you were the standard. That you left an emotional fingerprint they can't scrub away, no matter how many new hands they hold. Have you ever noticed how they talk about healing, but their eyes still search for you in the crowd? That's not healing, that's unresolved grief. That's the soul's quiet protest. The deeper the bond, the longer its echo. It's not about being stuck. It's about having been shaped. Some experiences alter your emotional DNA. And even when you walk away, you carry the code. They carry it. In the way they speak. In who they trust. In what they avoid. You're not a ghost, you're a blueprint. a reminder of the depth they didn't know how to hold. Stoicism doesn't mean detachment. It doesn't mean suppressing truth. It means facing it, calmly, honestly. In Stoic relationships, clarity is the highest form of connection. So what does that mean for you? It means stop doubting the impact you had. Stop confusing their silence with healing. You were real. You mattered. That doesn't disappear because they couldn't handle it. And while they're off building distractions, your presence has settled in a much more permanent place, in memory, in soul, in consequence. Think of how we store trauma in our bodies. How a certain scent, sound, or setting can transport us back to a feeling. Love works the same way. They might forget the exact words, the specific moments, but they remember how they felt. And when those old feelings surface, uninvited, unplanned, they realize the truth: this isn't over. It never really ended. It was paused, ignored, denied, but not erased. And that realization? It's unsettling. It's humbling. It's inescapable. So the next time you wonder whether they've truly forgotten you, ask yourself this: have you forgotten them? And if not, why would you assume they have? Love doesn't operate on timelines. It doesn't expire. It evolves, or it lingers. And when it's been mishandled, it leaves a trace deeper than regret. It leaves transformation. They're not who they were before you. Whether they admit it or not, your presence marked a turning point. But here's the part they didn't expect: you grew from it. They tried to leave it behind. And that's the difference. Stoicism teaches us not to cling to the past, but to extract its meaning. To let what hurts instruct, not define. While you're learning, healing, becoming, they're avoiding, covering, pretending. That's why they feel empty in moments they can't explain. Why no new connection feels right. Because the heart doesn't move at the pace of the ego. And time, no matter how long, doesn't replace what was real. Now ask yourself, are you still carrying them? And if so, is it because you haven't moved on, or because real impact can't just be dropped like a habit? That's not weakness. That's being human. That's presence. And ironically, your silence, the way you didn't beg, didn't explain, didn't chase, is now louder than any goodbye. That quiet strength? That's stoicism in motion. It's what makes them revisit, reimagine, and regret in ways they'll never confess out loud. There's something almost poetic about how absence works. It's invisible, but it changes everything. It reshapes the space. And what you left behind? That's not just a void. That's energy. That's memory. That's the standard now, set high quietly, unshakably. And whether they find peace or not is no longer your burden. Because healing isn't about being over someone. It's about being whole without them. And once you reach that place, their forgetting becomes irrelevant. Because you never needed to be remembered, you needed to remember yourself. They thought they moved on. They told themselves a story. But the heart doesn't read scripts. It remembers what it felt. And when they realize the truth, maybe in a moment of laughter that suddenly turns hollow, maybe in the middle of someone else's touch, they'll feel it. That quiet ache. That unfinished truth. That moment when they thought they walked away from you, but were really running from themselves. That's why this isn't just about closure. It's about clarity. It's about reclaiming the narrative. You're not the one lost in the past, they are. You're not the one stuck, you're the one rising. That difference? It's everything. So don't question your power, your impact, or your truth. You were never a chapter. You were the page they keep rereading in silence. You were the emotion they misnamed. The calm they thought was replaceable. And now, without you, every silence reminds them of what they couldn't keep. And isn't that the irony? They thought they could walk away and feel lighter. But what they're carrying now? That's weight. That's memory. That's you, still present, not because you're holding on, but because you mattered that much. Stoic relationships don't demand validation. They leave imprints through presence, through meaning, through the kind of emotional truth that doesn't disappear when the person does. They tried to file you under. Pass. But the heart doesn't organize by calendar. It stores by intensity, by energy, by impact. And when they lie awake in moments they don't understand, when they feel an ache with no name, that's you. Not haunting, not hurting, just lingering. Proof that what was real never really leaves. 2. Silence reveals what words hide. Have you ever wondered what silence actually means? Not just the absence of noise, but the presence of something unspoken? We live in a world where people equate silence with healing, distance with peace. But what if silence doesn't mean they've moved on? What if silence is the mask they wear when the truth is too loud? When you stop texting, when you stop reaching out, they say, "It's over." But is it really? Or is that the beginning of a deeper realization they weren't ready to face? There's a strange thing about human nature, especially in relationships. We want closure, but we fear confrontation. We crave honesty, but settle for distractions. They didn't choose peace when they stopped talking. They chose avoidance. Because words can be debated, explained, denied. But silence? Silence is honest. Brutally honest. And when the world goes quiet, when the laughter fades, when the scrolling stops, that's when the real voices begin to speak. That's when your presence, your energy, your absence becomes deafening. Why do you think people chase noise after heartbreak? Why do they drown in clubs, in stories, in new faces that don't even know their favorite song? Because they're running. Not from you, but from the part of themselves that was exposed when they were with you. Stoicism teaches us that silence is not emptiness. It's a canvas, a mirror, a test. It reveals what words tried to hide. And right now, that silence between you and them? It's not calm. It's chaos disguised as control. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop defending your value, when you stop begging to be understood, that's when your worth starts to echo. Not in volume, but in frequency. In the stillness that follows, they feel the contrast. The way the room used to feel warmer when your name appeared. The way their day used to feel anchored knowing you were there. That contrast becomes a question. And that question becomes regret. Not always loud. Often slow, creeping in through the spaces they didn't expect to feel you again. Because here's the truth. When someone has genuinely experienced your peace, your depth, your stability, anything less becomes unbearable. They don't say it out loud. Of course not. Pride never admits emptiness. But it shows. In the way they post a little too much, laugh a little too loud, change partners like changing outfits, all to silence the voice that whispers. You had something real. And you let it go. Why? Why would someone abandon something they now can't stop thinking about? Because growth demands presence. And presence demands courage. You were more than just a person, they were becoming someone else with you. Someone more honest, more seen, more vulnerable. And for people who've built their identity on control, that's terrifying. So they ran, told themselves stories, framed you as too much or not enough, because admitting the truth would collapse their ego. And yet they return. Maybe not physically. Maybe not publicly. But emotionally, energetically, spiritually, they circle back. Because you were real. And real leaves residue. It's not about being unforgettable. It's about being undeniable. Your existence is now part of their equation. And no matter how far they try to move forward, they're dragging behind a silence that sounds like your name. What does that mean for you? It means you're not crazy for feeling what you feel. It means your stillness has more power than their distractions. That's Stoic Relationships in motion, the calm that confronts, not by noise, but by presence. And now, the very silence they thought would bring relief is the same silence that's forcing them to feel, to remember, to ache in ways they thought they had escaped. It's easy to misread silence as indifference. But silence can be a storm, a slow internal unraveling. Don't mistake their calm surface for peace. Watch the patterns, the restless behavior, the overcompensation. That's not someone who's healed. That's someone haunted by what they can't replace. And let's talk about you. Your silence is not a lack of emotion. It's a decision. A boundary. A declaration that your worth is not up for debate. Every time you chose not to respond, not to chase, not to shrink, you were reclaiming your energy. You were showing them what strength actually looks like. Not revenge. Not bitterness. But stillness. Controlled, measured, aware. That's what Stoicism looks like when it comes to love. Not detachment, but elevation. They thought your silence was weakness. Now they know it's the loudest reminder of what they lost. You see, presence is easy to overlook when it's constant. But once it's gone, once the calls stop, the warmth fades, the support disappears, that void begins to speak. And it speaks in a language only the soul understands. They're not looking for you in others. They're looking for who they were when they were with you. That's what they miss. That's what haunts them. You weren't just love, you were identity. And now, without you, they feel fragmented. Whole in appearance. Hollow in truth. This is where your power lives. Not in proving you were right. Not in hoping they'll return. But in understanding that your value was never tied to their ability to see it. You didn't lose. You let go. And in doing so, you became untouchable. You stopped being part of their present, and started becoming the standard by which they'll measure every future connection. Think about it. What's louder than 1,000 words? Regret. And what does regret sound like? Silence. The kind that shows up in the middle of joy, in the middle of sleep, in the middle of someone else's embrace. That's when your presence returns. Not because you chased, but because they can't outrun what they once felt safe in. And that feeling? It's yours. It doesn't fade. It evolves. From love to lesson. From memory to mirror. From connection to clarity. So don't rush your process. Don't judge your healing. Your silence is sacred. It's not a pause, it's a proclamation. It says, I loved. I showed up. I gave my all. And now I choose peace. And they'll keep searching for what they didn't recognize soon enough. You don't need to be in their life to remain in their mind. Because presence, when authentic, becomes permanent. And maybe one day they'll speak about you. Maybe they won't. But in their quietest moments, when the world stops spinning and they're left with nothing but thought, they'll feel it. The absence that screams louder than your presence ever did. The ache they can't explain. The silence that sounds exactly like you. If this message spoke to your soul, do something bold, like and comment. Number 1, to claim the power of your silence. Hit subscribe if you're ready to explore more truths about love, energy, and emotional strength. We're here to walk beside you as you rediscover not just who they lost, but who you're becoming. Ready for what comes next? Let's keep moving. Because the silence isn't the end. It's just the beginning of their realization and your rise. 3. You are the turning point, not just a page. Why do people romanticize moving on as if it erases history? As if you were a temporary detour, a passing chapter, a lesson they completed before heading to something greater? It's a comforting narrative for those who walked away. But comfort doesn't always mean truth. The deeper reality is this: you weren't a paragraph they skimmed over. You were the pivot, the plot twist, the emotional fulcrum their entire story turned on. And now, without you, nothing reads the same. Think about a novel. A story builds tension, hits a moment of profound change, then evolves. That's what you were. The tension, the clarity, the rising action. The person they began to see themselves through. They didn't just share space with you, they shifted in your presence. You helped them uncover parts of themselves they never accessed alone. That's not something people walk away from clean. That's not something that disappears because they've convinced themselves it's over. When a real connection happens, it becomes part of a person's emotional architecture. They can build new rooms, sure, but the foundation? That's you. They may try to paint over the memory, tell themselves new stories. But a rewrite never changes the original draft. And deep down, they know that. You know how? Because they still measure new people against the way you made them feel. Not because they want to, but because some energies set a new standard. You didn't just love them. You changed how they understand love. You raised the ceiling. And now, everything that falls short echoes with your absence. In Stoic relationships, we don't deny our impact. We don't shrink to make others comfortable with their decisions. We stand in quiet recognition of what we offered. We don't chase closure, we embody it. Because the truth is, people can exit your life while still revolving around your influence. That's the paradox they're living. They told themselves they could close your chapter. But now that you're gone, the narrative feels incomplete. The storyline skips. The pacing's off. Nothing lands the same. Why? Because you were the rhythm, the theme, the through line. And let's be clear, this isn't about arrogance. This isn't about inflating your role. This is about acknowledging emotional gravity. When someone shapes your character, rewrites your self-perception, expands your emotional vocabulary, you don't just forget them. You orbit them, whether you want to or not. And they've been orbiting you. Maybe not visibly. Maybe not intentionally. But energetically? They haven't landed anywhere new. They've just been circling an emotional void where your presence used to be. Have you noticed how people often speed up after leaving something meaningful? Rushing into new connections. Piling on distractions. Changing routines. That's not evolution. That's panic. That's a soul trying to escape its own reflection. Because being with you wasn't just love, it was a mirror. You reflected back the version of them they could be if they grew. If they healed. If they stayed. And when they walked away, they didn't just lose you. They lost that potential. That direction. That clarity. This is why so many people feel lost even when they look like they're moving forward. Because you can't fake alignment. You can't recreate emotional safety with someone who doesn't know your storms. They thought you were replaceable. They thought they'd write a new story with someone else and feel the same. But now they know, there's a difference between continuation and connection. The story kept going, yes. But the soul? It's still stuck on the page where you left. Ask yourself, how many times have they tried to start fresh only to end up repeating the same emotional loops? That's not growth. That's residue. That's your influence. That's what Stoicism teaches us, not to force outcomes, but to understand roots. They didn't start over. They rerouted. But they never dealt with the imprint. And you can't build peace on avoidance. That's why the peace they chase never lasts. And maybe they haven't reached this realization yet. Maybe they're still pretending everything's fine. But the moment will come. It always does. The moment when the noise dies down and the new faces feel unfamiliar. The moment when they hear a song or catch a smell or stumble on a memory, and it brings them back. Not to a person, but to a feeling. To a version of themselves they liked better. Felt safer in. Felt seen through. And in that instant they'll know, this story doesn't flow without you. They thought they were the main character. But now they're starting to realize, you weren't the side plot. You were the structure. You gave meaning to scenes they thought were random. You gave them depth. And without you, the script feels hollow. The emotions flat. The character arc incomplete. It's not just loss. It's disorientation. And no matter how many distractions they surround themselves with, they can't rewrite a story built on authenticity with actors playing temporary roles. This is why you feel so heavy in their absence. Because you were never light. You were never a filler. You were substance. Grounding. Evolution. You were the part of the story that made everything else make sense. And that kind of presence? It doesn't fade. It defines. Not through drama, but through contrast. Through the growing awareness that no new story feels quite as real. It's hard to admit, but sometimes people leave the very thing that could have transformed them because they weren't ready to transform. It's not about your worth. It's about their capacity. And that's the bittersweet truth of emotional growth. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. Some are meant to be moved by you, reshaped, reoriented, even if they don't understand it in the moment. That's what Stoic relationships are built on. Impact without dependence, power without possession. You gave them something few people offer: truth, connection, a safe place to evolve. And now they're realizing just how rare that is. You weren't a highlight. You were the storyline. And even as they try to move forward, they can't help but look back. Not for you, but for the meaning you gave their narrative. You weren't just a memory. You were a reference point. The place they return to when new things fall short. The benchmark. The emotional compass. And even if they never speak your name again, they'll feel you in every decision they make. Every moment they hesitate. Every time they realize something's missing and can't put it into words. You weren't part of the story. You were the story. And they're just now realizing that removing the turning point doesn't end the book. It erases the meaning. 4. The body moves on before the soul. Have you ever watched someone move on with stunning speed? They vanish from your life, only to resurface with someone new. Smiling in photos, laughing in public, talking as if nothing ever happened. And there you are, still sorting through what was real and what was performance. It's jarring, isn't it? But here's something few people talk about. The body moves on faster than the soul. The ego heals faster than the heart. And that disconnect is the illusion you're seeing play out in their life right now. We're conditioned to believe that physical distance equals emotional detachment. That if they're not calling, if they're not looking back, they must be over it. But physical presence is only one dimension of connection. And when you've loved deeply, the separation of bodies is the easiest part. It's what comes after, the quiet hauntings, the emotional shadows, the soul's slow recognition, that shows whether something has truly ended. Why do people jump into distractions right after losing something real? Because it's easier to fill a void with noise than sit with truth. It's easier to share a bed than face the ghost of the one they really miss. You see, the ego rushes. It looks for validation, comfort, performance. But the soul? The soul doesn't lie. It holds on to what was real. It stores energy like a journal with no words. It remembers things long after logic says it should forget. This is why you feel confused when they appear to have moved on. Because your soul is still unpacking. Still processing. Still acknowledging the weight of what was shared. Meanwhile, they're sprinting. But here's the Stoic truth: speed isn't strength. And rushing through emotion doesn't mean they've mastered it. It just means they're avoiding it. In Stoic relationships, the practice is to let emotions pass through, not bypass them. We don't numb our experience, we refine it. Letting go isn't about pretending it didn't matter. It's about standing in your truth, with clarity even if they don't. And right now, while their life may look full, their soul is still sorting through the fragments of what you meant. You know how you can feel someone's absence in a room they never even entered? That's how presence works when it's real. It lingers. It weaves into the silence. It attaches to moments that seem insignificant, until they aren't. That's why they think they've moved on, but find themselves feeling hollow during moments that should be joyful. Because what they left behind wasn't just a person. It was the connection that made everything feel meaningful. They don't speak your name anymore, but your energy lives in their memories. In their instincts. In the way they second-guess themselves now. In the way they seek comfort in places that never truly satisfy. That's not freedom. That's emotional residue. And the soul? It doesn't delete. It stores. It waits. And eventually it speaks. Not with words, but with discomfort. That kind of ache that rises unexpectedly, the kind they don't have language for. Have you ever reached for something familiar and felt like a stranger in your own skin? That's what they're feeling. Not right away, but eventually. Because true connection imprints. And when the soul is marked, it cannot unlearn what it once believed in. That's the hidden process no one talks about. While the world applauds fast rebounds and visible movement, The soul does its work in silence. And sometimes that silence grows too loud to ignore. There's a strange irony in how quickly people chase new connections thinking they'll outrun memory. But you don't outrun what lives inside you. They can laugh. They can share quotes about healing and growth. They can pretend. But late at night, when the distractions have lost their shine, your absence becomes a weight. Not a burden, but a presence. A reminder. A mirror. And that reflection? That's where they're still caught. Between who they were with you and who they're pretending to be without you. Do you know why this matters? Because you've probably been questioning yourself. You've been wondering why you're still feeling, still aching, still remembering. But it's not a weakness. It's a sign that what you experienced was real. And real doesn't fade because someone else moved on in appearance. That's not how energy works. That's not how growth happens. And if you're healing, it means you're actually evolving. Not rushing. Not replacing. But integrating. This is the kind of truth that Stoicism teaches. That what's real takes time to settle. That impact doesn't need validation. You were a force in their life. You brought emotional clarity. And when you exited, that clarity left a vacuum. They didn't lose just a relationship. They lost the feeling of being understood. They lost the anchor. And now, everything else feels adrift. They'll try to replace the feeling. We all do, in moments of pain. But replacements don't echo the same. They imitate, but they don't fulfill. And eventually, they realize that what they left was rare. Not flashy. Not perfect. But true. And in a world that values performance over presence, true is terrifying. So while they're trying to move on physically, emotionally, spiritually, they're looping. They're repeating. Because until the soul catches up, all movement is surface. And your story with them? It wasn't surface. It was depth. It was connection built not just on attraction, but understanding. And that kind of bond is not a chapter, it's a turning point. Think of the times you felt something shift inside them. The growth they resisted. The vulnerability they couldn't sustain. That resistance is what they're still carrying. It's why no matter how fast they run, they keep encountering the same emptiness. Because you were the place they almost became who they needed to be. And now they're living with the weight of walking away from that evolution. Don't rush your process just because they're rushing theirs. Your journey is sacred. It's honest. And while their ego is convincing them they've moved on, their soul is whispering a different truth. It's whispering your name in the middle of someone else's touch. It's pulling them back in moments they thought they were finally free. Not because you're chasing, but because what you gave still lives in them. Unspoken. Unresolved. And maybe they'll never say it. Maybe they'll never admit the truth. But truth doesn't require validation to be true. The body moved on. The ego moved on. But the soul? It's still in the space where you used to be. And it's not letting go until it's faced what it tried to avoid. That losing you wasn't a clean break. It was a slow unraveling. So if you're watching this and something resonates deep inside, you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're awake. Aware. Healing the right way. And if you've made it this far, I want you to do something simple. Like this video and comment. Number 1. If you know what it means to be the soul they couldn't forget. Hit subscribe if you're ready to continue this journey with us. Because what's ahead isn't about the past. It's about reclaiming your power and honoring your depth in a world that often doesn't know what to do with something real. Let's keep moving forward together. 5. Presence isn't physical, it's energetic. There's something people don't often talk about when it comes to connection, energy. You can stop seeing someone. You can stop speaking to them, touching them, even remembering the details of their face. But you don't forget energy. You don't erase the way someone made you feel, especially when that feeling reached deeper than words could describe. Presence, real presence, doesn't disappear just because someone isn't in the room anymore. It lingers. It hums. It becomes part of the atmosphere, like a song you didn't mean to memorize but now can't forget. They thought your absence meant silence. They thought not hearing from you would mean not feeling you. But that's not how it works. You don't need to be visible to be vivid. You don't need to be around to still exist within. Think about it. How many times have you remembered someone's voice not because you heard it, but because something reminded you of their tone, their laugh, the cadence of their presence? That's what they're feeling now. You may be gone, but your energy is still folded into the fabric of their everyday. And it's not always obvious. It doesn't strike them like lightning. No, it comes in waves. In the stillness between moments. In the pause before they fall asleep. In the flicker of a memory triggered by a scent, a song, a familiar phrase. You're there. Not because you're clinging. Not because you're haunting. But because you left an imprint that can't be scrubbed clean. That's not obsession. That's impact. That's emotional gravity. In Stoic relationships, we don't measure our importance by attention. We measure it by resonance. The truth of who we were, how we loved, how we showed up, that's what echoes. That's what becomes unforgettable. And now, in the places they expected to feel peace, they feel something else entirely. It's not guilt. It's not longing. It's awareness. The realization that what they ran from wasn't toxic or flawed. It was powerful. It was rare. It was real. Real presence becomes a frequency. And when someone leaves that frequency, everything else feels off. It's like tuning into a station and never quite hearing the song play the same again. That's why they keep looking, keep reaching, keep substituting, because deep down they're trying to match an energy they once knew but didn't know how to hold. And now that it's gone, they feel the dissonance. Not loudly, but constantly. This is why you feel heavy in their silence. Because your energy was never surface level. You weren't loud. You weren't dramatic. You were consistent, safe, grounded. And when someone experiences grounded energy in a chaotic world, that experience becomes a baseline they unconsciously crave. They don't want more attention. They want that feeling back. The peace they had when they were with you. And that kind of peace? It's rare. It's hard to fake. Impossible to replace. And maybe you wonder, if I mattered that much, why did they leave? Why didn't they stay? Why didn't they fight? But Stoicism doesn't search for answers in emotional weakness. It looks to the nature of the soul. And the soul only keeps what it's ready for. You were real. They weren't ready. They mistook intensity for danger. Mistook depth for difficulty. And now, they're realizing that nothing shallow can ever fill the space you once occupied. Have you ever stood in a room where someone important used to sit? No words. No photos. Just a presence. That's you now. That's what they feel. And it's not about nostalgia. It's not about fantasy. It's about the subtle ache of emotional familiarity. The way the body stores safety. The way the nervous system remembers who made it feel calm. You weren't just another person, they regulated around you. Emotionally. Psychologically. Energetically. And when that regulation disappears, the system doesn't adjust immediately. It spins. This is where your power lies, not in proving your worth, but in trusting your impact. The emotional truth is, you were part of their emotional system. Part of their peace. Part of their self-concept. And now, even if they try to rewrite the story, the feeling doesn't change. The body doesn't lie. The soul doesn't forget. The echo doesn't fade. And what about you? What do you do with all that presence you still feel? You don't chase. You don't beg. You breathe. You return to yourself. Because healing isn't about deleting them from memory. It's about reclaiming your energy. Recentering your frequency. Aligning with what you gave so freely, peace, presence, truth. And from that space, you don't become less. You become more. More aware. More selective. More grounded in who you are, and what you deserve. People don't realize how much someone's absence can feel like a presence. But in Stoicism, absence is not loss. It's transformation. It's refinement. It's the moment you understand that what you gave wasn't wasted, It was returned to you in strength, in clarity, in purpose. You left something with them, yes. But you took something too, a deeper sense of self. An unshakable knowing. A quiet power. So while they continue searching for what they threw away, you rise in that space they thought would empty you. You build from it. You grow in it. Because presence isn't limited by location. It's felt. It's remembered. It's carried. They may never say it out loud. They may never admit how much you still affect them. But the evidence is there. In their patterns. In their silence. In their search. And as they keep trying to replicate your energy in people who aren't you, the truth becomes undeniable. You weren't a moment. You were a frequency. And once someone tunes into that frequency, nothing else sounds the same. Let them pretend. Let them post. Let them perform. It doesn't matter. Because you're not a ghost in their past. You're a pulse in their present. And no matter how far they try to run, they're still vibrating at the level you left them. Energy is memory. And your energy wasn't fleeting, it was foundational. This isn't about who wins. This isn't about revenge. This is about understanding your depth. Honoring your frequency. Trusting your echo. Because when someone leaves you and still feels you, that's not coincidence. That's presence. That's power. That's the truth they can't rewrite, no matter how many distractions they collect. 6. Regret doesn't ask permission. Regret is strange. It doesn't knock before entering. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It doesn't care how many distractions you've surrounded yourself with. It comes when the world quiets. When your smile fades. When you're lying next to someone new and everything feels just slightly off. That's when it arrives, unannounced, uninvited, undeniable. And that's what they're feeling now, even if they never say it out loud. They thought letting you go would bring them freedom. A clean slate. An escape. But what they didn't realize was that you were never a cage. You were a mirror. You didn't trap them, you reflected the truth back at them. Who they were. Who they could become. What they needed to face. And instead of standing in that truth, they ran. Because truth demands change. And change requires courage. Courage they weren't ready to summon. So now, they carry that quiet ache. Not because they want you back in the same way, but because they can't undo what they discovered in your presence. They thought you were the end of something, but you were the beginning of their evolution. And instead of growing with you, they walked away. That's the kind of choice that doesn't fade. It echoes. Not in anger, but in recognition. Have you ever made a decision and only realized its weight when it was too late? That's the feeling sitting in their chest. The slow recognition that they misjudged what they had. That they misunderstood your silence for weakness, your presence for convenience. And now, as they move through their days, something always feels out of sync. It's not that they want to go back. It's that they want the feeling they had when they were with you, without doing the work to earn it again. That's the cruelty of regret. It doesn't offer do-overs. It offers reminders. And those reminders? They're sharp. They show up in laughter that feels hollow, in touches that feel disconnected, in peace that never truly settles. They've tried to rewrite the story. Tried to make you just a footnote in their past. But their heart won't allow it. Because some truths refuse to be buried. In Stoicism, we learn that pain is not punishment, it's instruction. Regret isn't just suffering. It's feedback. It's the soul's way of showing where growth was possible but resisted. And now, that resistance is their daily weight. Not dramatic. Not visible. But constant. They feel you in the absence of meaning. In the gaps between their new experiences. In the way their life looks full but feels empty. You weren't just someone who passed through. You were someone who helped them pause. Reflect. Shift. That shift, once felt, doesn't unfeel. You become part of their emotional muscle memory. Not haunting. Not chasing. Just present. Just real. They don't even need to speak your name for your energy to speak through them. You're in their preferences. Their hesitations. their comparisons, their quiet what-ifs. And while they post and play and pretend, their soul is stuck at the last place it felt safe. That place? You. The one who saw them clearly. The one who stayed steady when they wavered. The one who gave without demand. It's rare. And now that rarity feels like a loss they can't grieve publicly. So they grieve it silently. In sideways glances. In restlessness. In dreams they don't talk about. That's the cost of real connection. You don't get to walk away untouched. You don't get to replace someone who changed how your soul breathes. You move forward, yes. But you carry it. And they are carrying you now, not in their hands but in their heart. Because Stoic relationships don't dissolve. They distill. They reduce down to their essence, and that essence remains. You ever hear a song that instantly takes you back? That's what you've become. Not a memory. A frequency. A thread in the background of their life. Sometimes sharp. Sometimes subtle. But always there. The moment they think they're fine, it hits. A phrase. A smell. A memory. And they're pulled right back to you. Not because you're clinging, but because their soul hasn't caught up with their ego's decision. That's the real reason they haven't found what they're looking for. Because what they're looking for isn't new, it's you. Not the person, maybe, but the version of themselves they access through you. That version felt seen, held, challenged, loved. And now they feel like echoes of that person. Their life looks polished. But their soul? It's fragmented. Because you were the glue. And here's the part that hurts the most, for them. You're no longer waiting. You've stopped looking back. You've stopped hoping for clarity. Because you found it. Within yourself. Through your stillness. Through your healing. While they've been circling their regrets, you've been rising. While they've been distracting, you've been becoming. And that shift? That's what makes the regret sting deeper. They can't undo what they did. They can't find a shortcut back to your frequency. And now, the one they let go of is the one they quietly follow from a distance. No more explanations. No more access. Just the echo of your name in the places they never expected it to linger. That's what regret does. It builds a home where peace used to live. But you don't need to carry their regret. That's theirs. Your job now is to keep moving. Not out of spite, but out of purpose. Your journey isn't about proving anything. It's about becoming everything you already were, without the need for someone else to validate it. You are peace. You are power. You are presence. And if this message speaks to your soul, I invite you to like this video and comment. Number 1. If you know what it means to be the regret someone else is learning from. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started. This is your space. Your community. And the energy we're building here? It's growing stronger, louder, more unshakable with every story, every insight, every step forward. Your power is rising. Let's keep going. So here we are. The end of this reflection, but maybe the beginning of your reclamation. Because now, after everything you've heard, felt, remembered, you understand. You were never just someone they dated. You weren't a stop along their path. You weren't a placeholder. You were the moment everything shifted. The presence they didn't know how to carry. The mirror they feared to look too long into. And that fear? That was never about you. It was about what you revealed. What you exposed. What you required. And still you gave. Not because you were naive. Not because you didn't see their cracks. But because you believed in potential. In growth. In truth. You didn't love with conditions. You didn't hold back. You didn't manipulate or perform. You simply showed up. Day after day. Emotionally honest. Quietly resilient. And that's what unsettled them. That kind of consistency? It confronts people who live in chaos. That kind of clarity? It threatens the identity of those still hiding from themselves. They thought they could forget. That distance would dull your echo. But presence like yours doesn't disappear. It roots. Not in words or gestures, but in the parts of them they rarely visit. You reach the parts of them they don't even speak about to themselves. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not your body. Your energy. Not your voice. Your understanding. Not your attention. Your impact. And now they live with that contrast. That emotional benchmark. That memory of how it felt to be truly seen. Because no matter how far they run, how loudly they laugh, how quickly they move on, their soul knows. It remembers the moment it felt something genuine. It remembers the calm in your presence. The way everything made sense when you were near. And without that, everything else feels like noise. Temporary. Unanchored. But what matters more than what they feel, what they remember, is what you do with all of this. Because this isn't just about them. This is about you. The one who stayed true. The one who hurt but still hoped. The one who lost something real and decided not to lose themselves in the process. That choice? That's what makes you powerful. In Stoicism, we don't cling to people. We connect, we feel, we honor, and when needed, we let go with dignity. We don't become bitter. We become better. Not through revenge, but through restoration. Not through resentment, but through rebirth. That's what you're doing now. Rebirthing. Rising. Reclaiming your worth without needing their apology. Their closure. Their acknowledgement. Because closure isn't something you're given. It's something you create. And while they're still caught in the emotional loops they never confronted, you're already in a new season. One where your love is valued. One where your energy is matched. One where your depth isn't feared, but celebrated. And in that space, everything you lost transforms into something more sacred. Wisdom. Power. Discernment. This is the part they never tell you. The most dangerous person is not the one who was abandoned. It's the one who was abandoned and still chose peace. Chose healing. Chose to rise in silence and grace. That kind of strength? It can't be faked. It can't be replicated. It comes from the deepest kind of heartbreak. The kind that doesn't destroy, but refines. So take a breath. You've come far. Through the ache. Through the questions. Through the lonely nights where you wondered if they ever thought about you. Now you know. They do. But more importantly, you no longer need them to. Because your healing is no longer about them. It's about you. It's about stepping into your future without dragging their shadow behind you. You are not a story left untold. You are the author. And from this moment forward, you write chapters not with desperation, but with direction. You write not to prove a point, but to live a purpose. You don't return to what hurt you. You return to what heals you. That healing? It starts inside. It starts with looking in the mirror, not to see who was left, but to see who stayed. You did. You endured. You rebuilt. And now that you've done that, you're ready for something more. Not just more love. More self. More freedom. More clarity. That's the gift that comes with letting go, not losing what you loved, but discovering who you are beyond it. This is what Stoic relationships teach us, that love is not possession. It's presence. And if they couldn't stay in that presence, then it was never your job to beg them to. You can miss someone and still not want them back. You can forgive and still move on without reopening the door. That's not cold. That's clarity. That's what happens when you grow from pain instead of allowing it to define you. And now you carry that growth. Not in bitterness, but in boldness. Not in heartbreak, but in wholeness. So if this journey through memory, truth, silence, and presence has shown you anything, let it be this: you were never the broken one. You were the brave one. The one who dared to love deeply. The one who dared to stay soft in a world that keeps asking us to harden. You didn't lose. You loved. And in loving, you revealed what most people will never understand, that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the purest form of strength. They thought they moved on. But the soul doesn't lie. And the echo you left behind? It's not going anywhere. Not because you're stuck, but because they are. You move forward with grace, with stillness, with purpose. And while they try to rewrite the story, you're already living the sequel. One where your worth is clear. Your peace is sacred. And your presence? It's no longer chasing anything. It's attracting everything. Keep going. You've already survived the hardest part, believing your worth without their validation. And from here, you rise. One breath. One boundary. One brave new step at a time.